Court of South Africa, Free State Division, Bloemfontein, is confirmed. 2. Section 26(1)(a) to c of the Births and Deaths Registration Act 51 of 1992 is declared unconstitutional to the extent that, in violation of Section 9(1) of the Constitution, it violates irrationally on the ground of gender, and to the extent that, in violation of Section 9(3) of the Constitution, it unfairly discriminates on the ground of gender by failing to afford a woman the right to have her spouse assume her surname, failing to afford a man the right to assume the surname of the woman after marriage, failing to allow for a married or divorced man or widower to resume a surname which he bore at any time, and failing to allow a man, whether married or divorced or a widower, to add to the surname which he assumed after the marriage any surname which he bore at any prior time. 3. The declaration of invalidity is suspended for a period of 24 months to enable Parliament to remedy the defects by either amending the existing legislation or passing new legislation in order to ensure that all persons are afforded the right of assumption of another surname. Pending the coming into force of the new legislation or amendments to existing legislation designed to afford the right of assumption of another surname as set out in Section 26(1) of the Act, it is declared that the provisions of Section 26(1) shall not apply when a person after marriage assumes the surname of the spouse with whom such person concluded a marriage, or after having assumed such surname, resumes a surname which they bore at any prior time. B, a married or divorced person, or a widow or widower resumes a surname which they bore at any other time. And C, a person, whether married or divorced, or a widow or widower, adds to the surname which they assumed after the marriage any surname which they bore at any prior time. 5, should Parliament fail to correct the defects in the 24-month period, paragraph 4 of this order shall continue to operate until remedial legislation, if any, is brought into operation. 6, the first respondent is ordered to pay the applicant's costs in this court, including the costs of 2 counsel where so employed. I hand down the judgment.
Breaking news, fam! The Constitutional Court has just made a landmark ruling. From today, husbands in South Africa are legally allowed to adopt their wives' surnames. The court found that sections of the Births and Deaths Registration Act were unconstitutional, so men now have the same right as women when it comes to surname changes in marriage. Now, I have to say, this is an interesting one, because on paper, it's about equality and choice. But honestly, I think this is going to appeal more to the rich and famous. You know, those with powerful surnames that carry influence. For most South Africans, especially in traditional households, the idea of a man taking his wife's surname might be seen as weak or even disrespectful to family traditions. So while the law now says it's possible, I'm not sure we're going to see a flood of ordinary men lining up at home affairs to switch surnames. But what do you think, family? Is this progress for gender equality, or is it a move that clashes with our traditions? Let me know in the comments.